When you take an uncontrollable berserker and give him 5 tons of muscle, make him practically invulnerable and immortal, and pop on some nice green skin for seasoning, you're in for a wild ride. Yes, the Hulk has consistently provided a roller coaster from hell during his time in the comics, being both a hero involved in some of the most badass fights in comics history, and yet also a terrifying menace at the same time. Though most of the Hulk's worst deeds are done when he's raging out, sometimes they come when he's being all eloquent and calm. He can save the world from a gamma bomb or some other kind of threat, but he can also detach himself into a mass of fleshy liquid and absorb you into his very being. Good. Well, anyway, I'm not going to experience this nightmare on my own, so buckle up. I'm Ewan from What Culture Comics, and here are the 10 worst things Hulk has ever done. Number 10. Considering letting his ex die for dumping him? Grey Hulk is often responsible for some of the more profoundly immoral things the Hulk has done in the past, largely because he's capable of sentient thought, unlike most of his savage brethren, and so when he does something bad, you know he's actively chosen to do it, instead of just, following basic instincts. Take, for example, the time Joe Fixit saw Marlo Chandler, his former girlfriend, being attacked by a werewolf. Call me crazy, but if you're a dude who can fight Thanos and not always end up in teeny tiny pieces, you should probably help anyone being attacked by a mere pathetic werewolf, even if it's not someone you're fond of. Because the Hulk was still bitter that Marlo had broken up with him though, he considered for a full moment leaving her to be mauled to death by a savage man-beast as punishment for having the nerve to leave him. I thought you were better, Joe. Number 9. Destroying a chunk of Las Vegas. The main issue with being the Hulk is that everything is very, very easy to break, and people usually don't like it when you break their stuff. Especially if their stuff is, say, the city they live in, which most infamously happened when our favourite green giant lost his mind and decided to attack Las Vegas during Fantastic Four number 533 to 535. While this is of course totally awful, you also have to kind of feel bad for him about the whole thing because he only lost it trying to disarm a gamma bomb that then blows up in his face. Sure, the whole almost demolishing an entire giant city thing is awful, but we've all done crazy things when we've been hopped up on radiation, right? Number 8. Ruining Bruce Banner's life. This one is more an amalgamation of different events, given that the Hulk has essentially served as both Banner's protector and often his biggest bully. Now, often this is because the Hulk, at least the primal version we historically have seen most often, is about as smart as a patch of drywall. He reacts only to Bruce's anger and distress, and comes out all guns blazing, which is useful when the issue is people are trying to kill me, but less useful when B-Man is stressing out because of literally anything else, which is a fairly frequent occurrence and is also #relatable content. Naturally, this has ruined friendships, relationships, and little things like Banner's ability to go and have a drink without worrying he's going to level like half the city he's in. Number 7. He slept with She-Hulk. Oh god. It would be more or less impossible to cover awful things the Hulk has done without covering one unfortunately famous fact. The Hulk has slept with his cousin, the She-Hulk. Yes, this is gross on both of their parts, especially because the pair are literal cousins. Now, this did happen in a what-if comic, but still. Yikes! Yikes! It doesn't even mention their cousins! Yikes! Number 6. Killing Tigra. The last Avengers story isn't exactly a cheery comic by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, it's one of the more ruthless storylines even when compared to other dark Marvel comics. And the Hulk is no exception to this, as his time spent trying to help Thor and Hercules in the mysterious Great Cataclysm appears to have irreparably damaged him. Or at least that's the only logical reason behind him going fully ape on his former team in the middle of a battle against Ultron, taunting Wonder Man by telling him to quote-unquote make a wish before snapping Tigra in half like a wishbone. Mercifully, we don't see the Hulk again in this story after this event, as it would be pretty hard for him to top that particular spot of awfulness. Number 5. He poisoned his wife. Now, it's easy to forget that Bruce technically was responsible for killing his wife Betty because of her exposure to his radioactive being, because Spider-Man did the exact same thing but with his Spidey semen that one time in that one comic that we always talk about, and are now banned from talking about because we talk about it so much. Anyway, though you initially want to excuse the Hulk's accidental murder, after all, how could he have known? ? It's quite hard to when you remember one crucial thing. Bruce Banner is a goddamn scientist. He didn't mean to poison her, sure, but how on earth did he and every other hero's super genius not consider that a man chock full of gamma radiation might cause trouble to those he's around a lot? Why wasn't everyone in close proximity having regular checks? Again, this one isn't intentional, and Betty did technically come back from the dead, just she'd eventually be made into a giant red She-Hulk murder bird thing because of said radiation, so, snakes and ladders. Number 4. Waging war on the Earth. It's fair to say that the Hulk was justifiably angry at the end of the Planet Hulk storyline. As far as he knew, his former friends had tricked him into going into space forever, which they had, which he thought was in order to try and kill him out there, which they hadn't. Hulk's ship just exploded by accident, but still, it looks pretty guilty. However, because the ship killed his partner and a huge portion of his newfound friends and family, the Jolly Green Berserker is more mad than anyone could have possibly expected him to be upon returning to Earth. Naturally, he goes after all the superheroes who sent him out, but in doing so he damages a huge chunk of the Earth and sort of wages war on the planet, given he brings an entire invasion armada with him. While it's crazy to suggest that the Hulk should have just sat and tried to talk it out with everyone because he didn't know the ship explosion wasn't on purpose, and also because the Hulk isn't the most relaxed kind of dude ever, a full-scale invasion does seem a bit overkill. Number 3. That time he was a dictator. While, strictly speaking, the Hulk's time as a brutal, tyrannical dictator saw him named Maestro and did take place in a future that is now considered an alternate timeline, it still is a version of the Hulk, and it does very much show what he's capable of. Maestro exists in a version of Earth roughly 200 years into the future from the main Marvel timeline, in a world where most of humanity, and also a whole lot of superheroes, were wiped out by a devastating nuclear war. In the rubble of this catastrophe rose a twisted version of our Jolly Green Giant, who quickly became a cruel despot because he was the biggest, meanest dude around, and also because the extra radiation knocked a couple morals loose in that big ol' head. While our Hulk rightfully beat up this monstrous version of himself, it definitely also freaked out both him and his human compatriot Banner to see such a dark side of themselves come to life. Number 2. Basically everything in Old Man Logan. Few comic stories managed to pull off as gross and evil a Hulk as we see throughout Old Man Logan. At first, it's easy to think the younger Hulk gang and their immoral behaviour isn't related to Bruce, because it's far enough in the future, your first thought is either that something has happened to him or that he's just straight up dead like many other Marvel heroes. But it quickly becomes clear that no, sweet Bruce Banner is now a weird, creepy overlord of the wasteland, possibly broken either by the destruction of the majority of his friends and loved ones, or because he decided to start having sex with She-Hulk and thought, well, guess I'll just have to go fully evil. Mwahaha! After ruining Wolverine's life by killing all his family and having slaughtered and eaten countless others, Incest Hulk goes full psycho and eats Wolverine whole, which karmically leads to his demise when Logan cuts his way back out. Mark Miller, everyone. Behold the sheer blurriness of it all. And number 1, a metric ton of cannibalism. Look, there's no escaping just how hugely influential the Ultimate Universe was and just how brilliant some of its comics were, but it also had like a metric ton of bruh moments. You'd be there reading along or happily like, only to see Hank Pym biting Blob's head off, at which point you'd look at the camera, pause, and say, bruh. Folks realize that Professor X brainwashed and lied to them, Black Widow dies and then everyone watches her sex tape, the incest between Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver Oh my god, it's making me lightheaded. Jesus Christ. Despite this becoming par for the course by the time Jeff Loeb got his not-so-eloquent mitts on the universe in the mid to late noughties, the fact that the Hulk eats like 12 different people was always going to catch you a little off guard, because Banner is often a vegetarian in the comics world, as he is in the Ultimates, and cannibalism is sort of the polar opposite of vegetarianism. Sure, it's easy enough to ignore how wild the Hulk is in this world. That is, until he's tearing Wolverine in two like a particularly appetizing breadstick. Throughout the course of the Collective Ultimate series, the Hulk eats a ton of enemies, about 3 members of S.H.I.E.L.D. medical staff, a Chitauri alien, and God knows how many more off the page, especially when you consider how many breakdowns this version must have had. Then hey, there you have it, that was our list on the 10 worst things that the Hulk has ever done. Know of any other hulkingly bad moments? Let us know in the comments below, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. That's all for now though, hope you have a great day, keep reading comics, and I'll see you next time.